Last night, God told me to watch September last night. As I quieted my soul in the stillness of the night, a voice rose within me with such clarity that it shook the foundation of my being. It said, "Watch September," and not in fear, not in trembling, but in holy expectation. For when God speaks, he does not speak to stir anxiety, but to awaken the spirit to readiness. September, then, is not merely a page on the calendar. It is a divine appointment, a threshold, a moment where what has been hidden in silence begins to break forth into sight. To watch is to align, to posture yourself inwardly, to know that the unseen is already moving into form. Heaven announces change before the earth can recognize it, and those who have ears to hear are invited into the unfolding. I tell you, this is not coincidence, this is not chance. September carries with it a shift, and if you are awake, you will witness it. The inner voice is the true prophecy. When I say that the inner voice is the true prophecy, I am not speaking of dreams that pass like shadows, nor of fleeting thoughts that come and go as the winds of the mind shift, but of that deep, unshakable whisper of spirit that rises in the silence when the noise of the world is shut out. That voice does not speak in thunder or in chaos. It speaks in stillness, with a certainty that does not demand proof, because it itself is the proof. When God told me, "Watch September," it was not a message to be weighed against newspapers, nor was it a sign to be debated with men, but it was an inward knowing that what had been unfolding unseen would begin to take form. You see, the world is always busy looking outward, reading signs in the sky, watching movements of power, analyzing the rise and fall of nations, but the true prophecy has never been given to the outward eye. It has always been given to the inward ear. When the prophets of old heard, they did not hear in the chatter of men, they heard in solitude, in quietness, in that place where man meets his Maker face to face within. That same voice has not gone silent. It is as alive today as it was then. But few are still enough to hear it, for the inner voice demands the death of distraction, the silence of noise, and the humility of surrender. It is not entertainment, it is instruction. It is not curiosity, it is command. To hear God say, "Watch September," is to know that time itself is pregnant with purpose, that what you see today is not the end, and that what is coming will not catch the awakened ones unaware. The inner voice is prophecy because it originates from the eternal, and the eternal cannot lie. Everything external bends to what is spoken within, for the inner world is the seed of the outer. If you do not hear within, you will always be a slave to what happens without. But if you hear within, you will know that every event, every change, every shaking, was already declared in silence long before the world witnessed it. This is why some men tremble at change, but the one who listens is comic, because he already knows what is unfolding is not chaos but design. When God whispers, he is not predicting. He is declaring what already is in the invisible. To watch September, then, is to shift your gaze from panic to purpose, from anxiety to awareness, from fear to faith. For if you listen only with the ears of flesh, you will miss the sound of heaven's decree. The newspapers will speak of crisis, leaders will speak of politics, neighbors will speak of rumors, but deep within the heart of the one who listens, there will be only one echo. This was already told, and that echo becomes your anchor. What does it mean to truly hear this inner voice? It means you cease to live reactively, chasing after every shadow, and instead live proactively, standing firm on the word whispered to your soul. It means that when others shake, you stand, not because you are stronger in flesh, but because you are rooted in spirit. It means that you discern that prophecy is not fortune-telling. It is alignment with God's eternal design, a design that unfolds in time but originates outside of it. So when you hear the inner voice, do not treat it lightly, guard it, cherish it, obey it. For many will dismiss it as imagination, but the imagination itself is the doorway through which the eternal speaks. That which seems faint within becomes unshakable without. That which seems insignificant when whispered in silence becomes undeniable when it manifests in daylight. And so I tell you, the true prophecy is never out there, it is always in here. God does not need to send thunder from the skies when he can speak in the chambers of your heart. The problem is not that he is silent. The problem is that men drown him out with their own noise. To watch September is to do more than count days on a calendar. It is to cultivate awareness of the invisible currents shaping the visible world. It is to walk with eyes open, knowing that nothing unfolds without first being declared within. The prophecy you are waiting for will not come by chasing after men's predictions. It will come when you become still enough to recognize the word already spoken in you. That is why I tell you, prophecy is not about prediction, it is about perception. It is not about guessing the future, it is about awakening to the eternal that is already written within your spirit. So when I say that last night I heard the whisper of God, watch September, I am inviting you into that same posture of inward listening, for if he spoke to me, he can also confirm it in you. Do not wait for the crowd to approve what you heard. The crowd has never been the voice of God. Learn to trust that still, small voice, for it carries more weight than the loudest noise outside. And when September comes, you will not be surprised, you will not be shaken. You will only nod in quiet agreement, saying, yes, this was already told. That is the power of the inner voice. That is the truth of prophecy. Every season holds a hidden appointment. Every season that unfolds upon the earth is not accidental, nor is it a random turning of time as men suppose. It is the unfolding of divine order, the calendar of heaven clothed in days and months, speaking a language that only the discerning can hear. When God said, watch September, he was not pointing to an empty date. He was calling attention to a hidden appointment that rests within that season, an encounter between the eternal and the temporal, a collision between what has been decreed in silence and what must unfold in visibility. Understand this. Time is not merely something that passes. It is the stage upon which eternity makes itself known. Every season carries within it an assignment, and those who walk blindly through the months as though one is no different from another miss the sacred rhythm of God's unfolding. September, then, is not simply another page in a man's calendar. It is a divine marker, a threshold of change, an appointed hour in which what has been concealed begins to reveal itself. This is why the voice said, watch. For to watch is to prepare, and to prepare is to recognize that God does not waste a moment, and he does not allow seasons to pass without purpose. Think of the farmer who looks upon the earth. He does not sow in winter, nor does he reap in spring. Each season has its work, its secret, its revelation. The seed sleeps in darkness before it breaks through in light. The rain falls in its due time before the harvest appears. So it is with the appointments of God. What you think is ordinary time is often the very stage where heaven has written an extraordinary unveiling. September carries within it a hidden appointment, not because of the number itself, but because heaven has chosen it as a vessel of manifestation. Men may look and see nothing but dates, but the one who watches with spiritual eyes will recognize that something concealed has been scheduled to break forth. This is the mystery of seasons. They hold within them both endings and beginnings, deaths and births, silence and song. You must learn, therefore, to honor the rhythm of time, for it is not your enemy, it is your servant. Time bows to eternity, and eternity uses time to deliver what has been promised. September is not far off. It is already here in the invisible, waiting to reveal itself to the visible. And those who are awake will not stumble into it unaware. They will walk into it with eyes wide open, hearts prepared, and spirits aligned. Every season is a messenger, carrying in its bosom the word of God, but only those who listen will hear. To the blind, autumn is merely the falling of leaves, but to the awakened, autumn is the signal of new life waiting in the soil. To the blind, a month is merely the ticking of clocks, but to the awakened, it is the moment when the unseen decree touches the earth. Do you see it? Every shift in time is a shift in destiny. Every turning of the season is an invitation to step into what has been written for you. That is why he said, watch September. For he knew that this season is not to be treated as common, but as holy ground, a place where something must unfold, something must shift, something must be birthed. And it is always the hidden appointments that carry the greatest weight, for men cannot prepare for what they cannot perceive, but those who watch are prepared before it comes. Consider how the prophets of old lived. They did not treat time casually. They walked in step with God's rhythm. When a word came that a season was appointed, they adjusted their lives accordingly, knowing that heaven was about to intersect with earth in a way that would change everything. The same is true now. September is not to be approached casually. It must be entered with awareness, with reverence, with readiness. Do not think that because others do not hear, nothing will happen. The majority never hears, the crowd never discerns. It is always the few who are awakened that recognize the hand of God in the seasons. Every season is an appointment, but only the awakened keep the appointment. Many miss it because they expect God to shout, but he rarely shouts. He whispers, and then he waits to see who is listening. He whispers, "Watch September," and if you dismiss it as nothing, you will pass by the very threshold of change without ever knowing what you missed. But if you take it seriously, if you guard it, if you prepare your spirit in faith, you will meet the appointment that heaven has scheduled for you. This is why you must not treat the changing of time as casual. It is a map of destiny. September is the door, and those who are awake will walk through it, while those who sleep will only wake up after the shift has already occurred. The question is not whether the appointment will come, it will come, for the decree of God cannot be broken. The question is whether you will be awake to meet it. Seasons are not meaningless, they are mirrors of heaven. Each turning point is an unveiling, and each unveiling carries the seed of transformation. The hour has been spoken, September has been marked, and your task is to watch, to prepare, to align, for every season holds a hidden appointment, and this one is no different. Do not be like those who walk with eyes closed through a sacred hour. Be like the watchman on the wall who knows when morning breaks. For those who watch September, there will be understanding. For those who do not, there will only be surprise. And I tell you, it is far better to enter a season with expectation than to stumble into it in confusion. Every season holds a hidden appointment. This September is no exception. The shaking before the rising, there is always a shaking before the rising, always a trembling in the earth before a new foundation is revealed, always a disruption before a birth. For nothing of worth enters the world without labor, and nothing of destiny manifests without the crumbling of what can no longer stand. This is why when God whispers, "Watch September," he is not warning you of chaos without meaning, but of order hidden in upheaval, of birth pains that precede the unveiling of what must come forth. For the shaking is not destruction, it is realignment. Look closely at the way the universe itself is ordered. The seed must break before the plant can rise, the ground must be torn before the harvest can grow, the womb must contract before the child can emerge, and the heart must be broken before it can be remade in truth. Shaking is not punishment, it is preparation. Yet men often confuse the shaking for the end, when in reality it is the signal of a new beginning. For God has never torn down without the intent to build again, and he has never uprooted without the intention of planting something greater in its place. September has been marked as a season where the unstable will tremble, where thrones not built on truth will collapse, where voices built on lies will be silenced, and where the false will give way to the true. This is why the command was not to fear September, but to watch it, because those who understand the nature of shaking will not despair. They will rejoice, for they know that what cannot be shaken will remain, and what remains is the eternal, the unshakable, the true. Every great rising in history has been preceded by shaking. Nations have shifted, kings have fallen, systems have collapsed, only to give rise to something greater, something purer, something aligned with heaven's design. The same pattern unfolds in your life. The relationships that collapse, the doors that close, the opportunities that vanish, they are not random cruelties. They are the hand of God shaking what cannot remain so that what must remain can stand. To watch September is to be ready for the shaking, to understand it not as chaos but as confirmation that God's word is breaking into visibility. When men see shaking, they panic, they cry, they cling to what is falling apart. But the awakened one lifts his eyes and smiles, for he knows the shaking is the sound of resurrection stirring beneath the soil. For how can the new rise unless the old makes room? How can truth ascend if falsehood is never brought low? The shaking must come, for without it we would cling to illusions, we would bow to idols, we would mistake shadows for substance. September, therefore, is not to be seen as the loss of stability, but the revealing of true stability. What shakes is temporary, what remains is eternal. What falls is man-made, what stands is God-ordained. And so I tell you, do not despise the shaking, for it is heaven's mercy. Do not resist the trembling, for it is heaven's order. Instead, align yourself with the eternal, and you will not only survive the shaking, you will rise with it. When the world shakes, it is those anchored in the eternal voice who remain calm, who remain steadfast, who remain unmovable, because they know the shaking is not meant to destroy them, but to lift them. Think of the eagle in the storm. When the winds rage, lesser birds hide, but the eagle spreads its wings and rises higher on the very winds that terrify the others. The shaking that terrifies men is the same shaking that lifts the chosen higher. This is why you must not fear September. You must watch it, for it will separate the temporary from the eternal, the false from the true, the unstable from the unshakable. And if you are rooted in the eternal, you will not be shaken, you will rise. This is a principle that has never failed. Every shaking is the prelude to glory. When Joseph was shaken from his family, shaken in the pit, shaken in the prison, it was only that he might rise to the palace. When Moses was shaken from Egypt, shaken in the wilderness, it was only that he might rise as the deliverer. When David was shaken by betrayal, by rejection, by pursuit of enemies, it was only that he might rise as king. And even Christ himself was shaken, despised, rejected, crucified, not to be defeated, but to rise in glory that could never be touched again. The shaking precedes the rising, the cross precedes the crown. So it will be in September. What trembles is not the end, it is the threshold. Watch carefully, and you will see thrones fall, systems tremble, voices silenced, yet in the midst of it, something will rise, something truer, something unshakable, something born of God. If you have ears to hear, this shaking is not your enemy, it is your ally. It is not destruction, it is deliverance. It is not the end of hope, it is the beginning of fulfillment. And I tell you this, if you align with what is eternal, you will look back on the shaking and realize it was the very thing that lifted you to heights you could not reach on your own. That is why the voice said, "Watch September." For those who are blind, it will be chaos. For those who are awake, it will be confirmation. Watch the shaking, not with fear, but with faith, for the rising always follows. And when the dust settles, what will remain will not be the fragile systems of men, but the unshakable word of God, and in that word you will find yourself standing higher, stronger, and freer than before. The vision precedes the manifestation. Before anything appears in this visible world, it is first born in the invisible. Before the harvest rises from the earth, the seed lies hidden in the soil. Before the building stands, the blueprint exists in the mind of the builder. Before destiny manifests, the vision is planted deep within the soul, and this is why when God spoke, "Watch September," it was not a call to wait idly for something to randomly happen, but a divine reminder that the inner vision always precedes the outer manifestation. The world teaches you to believe only in what you see, but heaven teaches you to see before you believe, to trust in the unseen seed rather than the visible sprout, to hold fast to the whisper within even when the silence outside mocks you. Every prophet, every dreamer, every vessel used by God has walked this same path. They saw before others saw, they heard before others heard, they believed before the world gave them proof. Noah built an ark because of a vision of rain before a drop had ever fallen. Abraham walked toward a land he had never seen because of a vision within his spirit. Joseph endured betrayal and prison because of a vision of rulership that lived in his soul. David faced giants because of a vision of kingship before the crown was ever placed on his head. Vision is the womb of manifestation, and until you honor it, you will never see the fullness of what is promised. This is why the command was not to fear September, but to watch it, because watching requires eyes of vision, not just eyes of flesh. Watching is holding on to what you have seen in the unseen until it crystallizes in the seen. Manifestation is not magic, it is the natural outworking of vision faithfully held. Many stumble here because they dismiss what is invisible as imagination, yet imagination is the language of prophecy, the canvas upon which eternity paints its decree. What you see inwardly you will eventually see outwardly, for the inner precedes the outer just as surely as lightning precedes thunder. Do not despise the inner vision simply because others cannot see it. If they could see it, it would not be yours. If they could understand it, it would not be divine. The vision is given in silence because it is meant to grow in secret before it manifests in public. That is why September has been marked. It is the season where what was whispered in the hidden place will begin to show itself in the open. Do not mistake the delay between vision and manifestation as failure. Delay is not denial, it is gestation. Just as a child forms in the hidden chambers of the womb before it is revealed to the world, so too does every promise form in the chambers of your soul before it breaks into visibility. September is the month where hidden pregnancies will begin to show, where unseen seeds will begin to sprout, where visions carried quietly in the hearts of the faithful will start to manifest in ways the world cannot ignore. The vision always comes first, manifestation always follows. That is the divine order that has never been broken. And yet, many abort their visions prematurely because they grow weary of waiting. They doubt the unseen. They listen to the noise of unbelief around them, and so they discard the very seed that was meant to birth their destiny. But those who keep watching, those who guard the vision as treasure, those who water it with faith and nurture it with expectancy, they will see what they saw within appear without. Watching September means understanding this sacred order. You do not need to wait for proof. You are already carrying the proof within you. You do not need to fear the shaking. You have already seen the rising within. You do not need to ask when it will happen. You already know it is written, and it must unfold. The outer world is always late to the inner decree. Men may call you foolish, but when the vision manifests, they will call you chosen. Men may dismiss you now, but when September reveals what you have carried, they will remember what you declared. This is the way of God. He plants vision in the hidden so that when it manifests, no man can claim the glory. He chooses the quiet dreamer, the unnoticed believer, the overlooked vessel, and he whispers to them his eternal decree, knowing that when the manifestation comes, all will know it was not by power nor by might, but by the Spirit of the living God. Therefore, I say to you, guard the vision, watch it, nurture it, believe it, for it is the seed of what must come. Do not abandon it in doubt. Do not dismiss it as fantasy. Do not despise it in delay. The vision is truer than the world outside of you, for the world outside must eventually bow to the decree within. September is not coming as an accident. It is coming as a manifestation of what has already been written in the invisible. Watch, then, with eyes of faith, not with eyes of flesh, and you will see that what God whispered in the night will stand in the light of day, for the vision always precedes the manifestation, and the manifestation never fails to arrive in its appointed time. Faith is the act of watching. Faith is not the weak posture of waiting with folded hands and empty hope. It is the burning vigilance of the soul that refuses to be moved by appearances, the steady gaze fixed on what God has whispered even when the world offers no evidence, the unshakable conviction that what was spoken in the secret place must come alive in the open. And this is why when God said, "Watch September," he was not calling for idle spectatorship but for active faith, for watching is not simply looking at days pass by on a calendar. It is the spiritual discipline of holding your inner world steady until the outer world bends to it. Faith is watchfulness, not because it stares outward for proof, but because it holds inwardly to the word already given. To watch is to keep vigil over the unseen promise like a guard standing at the gates of destiny, refusing to allow doubt, fear, or delay to steal the seed planted by God. Many hear a word but do not watch it, and so it slips away from them. Many receive a promise but do not guard it, and so the noise of life drowns it. Many see a vision but do not nurture it, and so it withers in neglect. But faith keeps watch. It tends the vision in silence. It waters the seed with expectancy. It protects the whisper from the storms of unbelief, and it refuses to sleep until manifestation breaks forth. This is what it means to watch September. not to anxiously scan the horizon for signs, but to anchor yourself so deeply in the word spoken that you cannot be moved when others falter, so rooted in faith that you live in the manifestation before it even appears. Faith is the act of watching because it refuses to let go, it refuses to forget, it refuses to compromise, it refuses to give in to appearances that contradict the eternal decree. Every man who ever saw the promise fulfilled did so not because he was stronger than others, but because he watched when others slept, he believed when others doubted, he held when others let go. Noah's faith was the act of watching when the skies mocked his vision. Abraham's faith was the act of watching when years passed without the promised child. Joseph's faith was the act of watching when the prison walls told him he had been forgotten. David's faith was the act of watching when enemies surrounded him and kingship looked impossible. And Christ himself showed us the ultimate act of faith when he watched through death itself, trusting the promise of resurrection before the stone rolled away. Faith watches not because it is blind, but because it sees more clearly than eyes of flesh. It sees what God has said. It sees what heaven has written. It sees what eternity has already finished, and it keeps that vision alive until time surrenders to it. This is why September is not to be met with fear but with faith, for the one who watches in faith is already victorious, already anchored, already aligned, regardless of what storms arise. To watch in faith is to declare within yourself, though I see nothing yet, I already know it is done. Though the earth shakes, I already know what remains cannot be moved. Though men doubt, I already know what I have heard is truer than what they see. Faith is the act of watching because it is never passive. It is participation in creation. It is the soul's agreement with God's decree. It is the alignment of the inner world with the eternal word. When you walk in faith, you are not waiting for September to prove itself. You are proving September by how you live now. You are already inhabiting the reality that will soon manifest. You are already walking in the promise while others are still debating its possibility. Faith is the substance of what is hoped for, the evidence of what is unseen. It is watching the invisible until the visible conforms. And let me tell you, the world may mock those who watch. The crowd may call them foolish dreamers, but history always vindicates faith, because what is born in faith cannot die in manifestation. To watch September in faith is to stand as though the promise has already unfolded, to rejoice before you see, to prepare before it arrives, to align before the shaking begins. This is why so few walk in the fullness of God's word, because so few are willing to watch with faith. They want proof first, but faith does not wait for proof, it creates proof. Faith is the act of watching because it is the eternal yes of the soul to the voice of God, and once that yes is uttered, heaven and earth conspire to bring it forth. So I tell you, do not watch September with the eyes of flesh, watch it with the eyes of faith. Do not wait for the crowd to see it for yourself. Do not wait for confirmation from men, hold the confirmation God already gave you within. Faith is the act of watching, and those who watch in faith will not only see September, they will rise in it, they will stand unshaken in it, they will testify of it when others are still confused. And when it comes to pass, when the vision manifests, when the shaking reveals what remains, the world will say it happened suddenly, but you will know it did not happen suddenly at all. It happened the moment you believed, the moment you chose to watch in faith, the moment you aligned your spirit with the eternal decree. That is the power of faith. It is not waiting for tomorrow, it is inhabiting tomorrow today. So as September approaches, as the days turn, as the unseen edges closer to sight, do not simply count time. Watch it in faith, guard it in faith, live in it by faith. For faith is the act of watching, and those who watch in faith will never be disappointed. For heaven never fails, the word never falls, and the vision never lies.